On top of that, Director Rajan, I know that there's a number of conversations along the same lines occurring. One in particular that I recently read about, which has to do with the HB1 visas. And is that an area also that GoBiz follows, takes a look at, and determines whether or not that is being directly impactful to local jobs, opportunities for Californians?
Well, that also, of course, is a federal program. We don't have any formal role in engaging in how the H-1B visa process plays out. So I really can't do much more than sort of refer back to the answer that I just gave, which is how do we continue to create job growth? How do we grow the pie as much as we can such that there's a way to accommodate our California worker job opportunities, but also to acknowledge and frankly capitalize upon our international position? I think it's about growing the pie, and I think that's what GoBiz is focused on more than anything.
Okay, maybe we'll I know Mr. Go ahead. Mr. Barrow, Assemblymember Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, good to see you again. You're a great ambassador for our state. Keep up the good work, and I've enjoyed our private conversations. A lot of these things we read in the media and these companies happened before I was elected, but I'd like to get your thoughts on, as you're interacting with each one of these businesses, I'm more concerned about what the fundamentals are for a business to ultimately make the decision to consider leaving the state. And then it seems like the legislature and the administration will have to jump in at crisis level to stop it, whether it's the Film Commission or Toyota or Tesla. Could you talk about some of the fundamentals that you've seen from these businesses, whether it's workers' comp or whatever you've seen from these businesses to get them to a point where they consider leaving?
Yeah, you bet. And again, to Assemblymember Gibson's question, I do think about it in that cost-benefit analysis, right? I think that's how all businesses make decisions. They have to. If the benefits outweigh the cost, they can do it. If the costs outweigh the benefits, they can't. It's really just a matter of math. And I think that businesses want to be in California. The benefits are clear. I think workforce is something that we have to reinforce. Talent is something that I get all the time. Businesses want to avail themselves of the greatest talent that they can get because that's the lifeblood of their companies. They want to know that we are going to continue to have a robust pipeline of workers that can help provide the greatest talent and abilities inside of their organizations that they can. So that's critically important. There's no question that the mechanical costs of their business, right? The cost of labor, the cost of energy, the cost of real estate. These are things that they are very mindful of. The availability of housing for their workers is a very big issue, and I think it's something that we have to continue to think about as a state so that the workers can have the housing that they need, that can afford, that can allow them to be successful living and working in California. So that's a very big issue to be sure. And on the regulatory side, and we've had some good exchange about this, there's no question that they want to see an easier, faster, more transparent way to get into compliance. I will tell you that businesses, to me, don't raise to me as much concern about the standards that we've set, whether it be on environmental regulation, on labor protection, on consumer protection, public health. Some folks will quibble and they'll argue that California standards are perhaps too high comparative to other places. But I can tell you in my experience, it's not so much a debate on the regulations about what the standards are. It really just comes back to process. Businesses say, look, I can factor that in. I can accept what California standards are. And frankly, I'm good with California standards. I want to protect the environment too. I want to have good public health too. I'm not at odds with what those values are. But you got to give me a process that I can get through faster in a way that doesn't create so much risk to my business because I don't know what the beginning, middle, and end of that regulatory process looks like. That's why we're doing the things that I described in our presentation. And I think to the extent that we can use technology, that we can get at the state, regional, and local governmental level more consensus, more understanding about the importance of regulatory systems that are more modern and easier to navigate. I think to the extent that we can do that, that will also help reinforce that cultural change to where we get to a place in California where we're working with businesses to get them into compliance with our rules so they can get on with doing their business, not engaging with them from a law enforcement perspective because we think that they failed to achieve our standards and there's an adversarial relationship. I think we've made a lot of progress. You know, Bloomberg had a piece last week that had a provocative title that said, you know, the #1 state in the country for doing business, yes, California. You never would have seen that 2 years ago, 4 years ago, or 10 years ago. I think it's because of a lot of the success that we're having, but I think they sense a new attitude out of the governor and the legislature to be more competitive, to be more nimble, and to make it easier to do business in our state. And I think that's part of the reason why you see such great statistics out of our economy in the last couple of years.
Well, the second part I have, do you have the ability in your office to create new programs, or are there tools that we can give you to help you do your business better?
I think that we have much of what we need on this regulatory side. I think that the Cal Gold tool that I mentioned is one that is we're already working on, and I think it's very valuable. So I'm not here with any particular requests in that regard, but I think that as our team continues to do its work and we do surface, I think, ideas or mechanisms that could exist in our shop or in other places, we of course will always bring that forward because we know and we appreciate your eagerness to want to help create those mechanisms to build on our success.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Assemblymember Kansan-Chu.
All right. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Kish, for a wonderful presentation. Just to follow up on Bill's question, as a San Jose City Council member representing the most growth and rapid growth area in the North San Jose, we have a plan to expand 28 million square feet of new industrial and commercial spaces. My first-hand experience for dealing with those private industry people is that they have a lot of positive things that really work in our favor, but they're mostly concerned about the cost of energy and housing. I'm glad you touched a little bit. And, the first time I heard the word housing is when you answered Assembly Member Bro's question. So, what is the governor is going to do something in the energy area and the housing area? Is my question?
Well, on the energy side, of course, as you well know, our climate policy and our energy policy is a centerpiece of the governor's leadership. It's something that he's committed to. And what I see on the economic side is lots of opportunity, right? As I mentioned, through the groundbreaking policies that we've created here in California, it's stimulating a whole new era of innovation, business development, and creation that's finding ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, make our power cleaner and more renewable, change the way that we do transportation and our industrial operations and the way we power and manage our homes. All of that, and of course you would know, being from the Silicon Valley, that's all amazing fodder for innovation and technology. But by the way, it doesn't have to just be in the Silicon Valley. I think all across California, there are amazing opportunities to develop new companies, to develop whole new industries that will bring jobs and economic contribution all across the state. In fact, in my view, it's the biggest opportunity that we have is to leverage our energy policy and ingenuity and innovative capacity and reach not just into the Silicon Valley, as important as it is, but into the Central Valley and into the Inland Empire and into the Imperial Valley where I was just last week. I was down in Imperial, a community that still has over 20% unemployment, right? Real struggle in that community, and yet it's amazing to see how they've organized themselves and developed a pipeline of literally billions of dollars worth of projects in the clean energy space. They need help from the state, and I think that we all collectively can think about how can we find more resources, ways that we can help invest in things that will support their success so they can help produce the technologies of the future that will help us achieve our energy and climate goals, but also to do it in a way that can renew the economy in that region. So I think thinking about it, I'm sure my friend Dorothy will have a lot more to say about the impact on manufacturing, and Dorothy's a wonderful leader of that organization. But what we've got to do together is think about a new era in California where we're leading not just in climate policy, but in a low-carbon economy. And I think if you do that, you're creating economic possibilities that also can reach into reducing overall energy spend because we're doing things that are cleaner, that are faster, that are more efficient, that are reducing energy costs because we're bringing technology to bear on what that energy spend is. So there's a lot more to say about how we build a low-carbon economy in this state, but I think it's we're off to a great start and we have lots of possibilities. On the housing question, again, it's a big question. There's no doubt about it. through mechanisms that have found its way through the budget, that have been supported by the legislature, and other mechanisms that exist, be it through AB 32 and its progeny, or just looking at the budget generally through things like the new Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District mechanisms and others. The governor has shown an understanding and a commitment to try to help support the development of more housing, different housing types, all across California, to create those housing opportunities for our workforce and for our communities. It is a big challenge, but there's no question that there are things that have happened and that we'll continue to work on to support that.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that housing is, to me, is really part of the economic development. So I'm glad to hear that the housing, the word came out when you answered the question. So I just want to stress the fact that when we're talking about the economic development, housing and the infrastructures, it should be part of it. And just another statement, since you're talking about the infrastructure district, I just want to let you know that City of San Jose and many other neighboring cities still trying to recover from the loss of RDA and also the not enterprise zone, but it is the enterprise zone. So that's just really a statement. Another question is, I know it's very successful to have the trade office in Shanghai, China. Mm-hmm. Is the governor considering expanding trade offices in other countries like in Taiwan, Korea, or India?
There's no shortage of great venues around the world where we continue to engage and want to even step up our engagement with those places. As it relates to physical offices, I think we continue to be in a go slow sort of mode about that. We want to continue to evaluate the model of the office that we've opened in China, which is a pretty innovative model. There's no state money going into that office. It's the operations are being supported through contributions from companies and other entities that want to help foster international trade between California and China in that circumstance. As I said, we're very bullish on the success that we've had so far, but we want to continue to evaluate both the model and the viability and the importance of that physical presence relative to our international goals. So the governor is asking us to be very deliberate about evaluating the performance of that office before we replicate it to other places.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kim?
Thank you. I think I speak for myself and my colleagues sitting here today that it's been a very great overview of your programs, policies, and initiatives that GoBiz is doing. So thank you. Thank you for being here. There are many programs that GoBiz is implementing, and I commend you in all of those areas because in such a short period of time, as you said, I'm really encouraged to hear about the success. And I know we have some way to go to make it into a full, successful program. But I think I agree with you. We're off to a very, very good start. I do have a few questions related to, again, the International Trade Division, where you are promoting EB5. And great questions have been asked, and you did answer in a very eloquent way. So I will just rephrase that in one way. That is, EB5 and also through the regional center programs have really helped spur the local economy by bringing foreign investment and invest in, obviously, California is one of the big beneficiaries of that. In my own district and throughout Southern California, I personally know of several regional centers that have brought in foreign investment, and through it, it's not just the investment, but the jobs that are created from it, and also we have those people that are bringing family members. They need to purchase homes for them to live in. When they bring in their children, they have to send them to schools. I mean, there is a lot of ripple effect that benefit us. And I think, Ms. Brown, your concern, maybe you alluded to that a little bit. Maybe are we bringing foreign employees or jobs that are replacing the current jobs that may be available to our Californians, for example. I think the idea of doing EB-5 program is by using the foreign investment, we create jobs locally and we hire people locally, which is the reason why I'm very supportive of this program, and I want to see it continue. But it's my understanding that the Regional Center program is expiring by September of this year. So I will be working very actively to ensure that the program continues, but I know this is something that the federal government at the congressional level, they have to work on. And I already had a brief discussion with Chairman Garcia to the fact that maybe we can send a sense of our legislature, encouraging the congressional offices and members of the Congress to continue doing that. And in that regard, I would love to work with your office in sending that positive message to do so. And I know, thank you, Mr. Assemblyman Chu, for raising the question of, are there other trade offices other than Shanghai? And I would be particularly interested to hear whether or not, please confirm this, whether or not we do have a trade office in South Korea. As you know, we just successfully concluded the 3 years of successful implementation of U.S.-Korea free trade agreement. And we both understand that it has really helped our both economies. And I know we'll only see more coming out of it. As a result, I think strengthening trade office in South Korea would be the right way to go. And I want you to respond to that briefly, and then I have a couple more quick questions.
Sure. On your first point about working with you on EB-5 reauthorization at the federal level, we'd be happy to work with you, so thank you for bringing that up. We do not have an office in South Korea. We only have the one office now, which is the office in Shanghai. And as I mentioned to Assemblymember Chu, we're going to continue to evaluate the viability of the model and whether we should replicate, have physical presence in other places. But South Korea is a great example of a country where, though we don't have a physical office, we have very strong ties. And in fact, my deputy for international, Brian Peck, visited South Korea last year. We've also had many inbound delegations from South Korea that have come to visit us here in California. We've made a particular effort to interact with those folks that come and sort of the intermediary organizations where we strengthen those ties. We work in a very consistent way because there's no question that that country is very vital. And the free trade agreement, without a doubt, is going to continue to help expand the relationship between California and South Korea. So it's a relationship that we value very much.
Sure, thanks. One quick question is, I know that the California Competes program receives many more applications than the amount of tax credits that you can award, and you mentioned that how successful it is. So should the legislature work to increase the available credits for this program? And is there any other ways that we as legislature can help these businesses to thrive in California?
Well, we do get lots of applications, which we're glad about. We want the program to be well known and for it to be well regarded and for folks to pursue it. So we want to maximize the impact through the resources that have been allocated to us at this point. On the question of whether you all should expand it, I'm going to have to leave that to you all to decide what you think is in the best interest, and of course working with the governor around the budgetary implications of whether that's warranted. What I will say in our office is that we will continue to provide to execute the program as best we can and to provide you and others data that you can look at to assess the value potentially of expanding the program. So you can count on us to provide you with information to make those judgments.
Thank you. One last question. I will make it quick. We all from so many businesses that the current state regulations are a burden for them, and that's why we're raising our concerns about so many businesses wanting to leave California because of those burdensome regulations. And I know GoBiz offers a permitting process, as you mentioned, and also maintains the CalGore website. So the your organizations is in a unique position to work with businesses attempting to comply with our state regulations. So, but while this is a successful program, you also mentioned that there is much more work to do to make this program more successful. So do you have any idea, where are you right now in terms of coming up with ideas to make it even better?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we did recently a very meaningful refresh of the Cal Gold program, improved its functionality, sort of the user experience, make it accessible on mobile devices because we know that's so important out there in the marketplace. So we've just done a significant refresh of the tool that we think is having a really positive impact. I would also mention, as I said to Assemblyman Bro's question some time ago, that I think that we can expand the impact of that tool by encouraging state agencies and regional and local governments and permitting authorities to continue to update the technology inside of their individual programs so that there can be a more unified experience and a richer experience all the way through the front door of our tool, but then actually reaching into those respective agencies as well. It's great to be part of democracy at work, right? So I think that there are some. I think that's really the general trend that I would mention. And then lastly, really quickly, I just want to say that I know there's a general concern that gets raised. It gets talked about in the press a lot about businesses leaving California. We're happy to provide statistics, but the short answer is that when you look at in our $2.2 trillion economy. Of course, there's going to be movement in and movement out of businesses. The number of businesses that actually wholesale get up and leave California is de minimis relative to the number of businesses that exist in our state. So we're seeing growth, and we're seeing lots of positive trends. So I don't want to continue to have folks be fearful that there's some large exodus of businesses. But that is certainly not to say, and I never will say, that A, any business that leaves, we take it personally, and B, there's lots of investment decisions that we can positively impact. So there's more for us to do, but the numbers show that you aren't seeing a big exodus of businesses from California. It's really quite the opposite.
All right. Assemblywoman Irwin?
I'll be quick with this. I just want to say it's very heartening to hear about the success right now of Go Business. And we do have a local company that applied for California Competes and got a $2 million grant and created 385, or is creating 385 jobs. I think that's an excellent program, and I really like the accountability in it. It's very well thought out. But my question is actually about the innovation hubs, and you have these different areas. How were they determined, and will you be adding other areas to this program?
Yeah, so that's been a program that has been evolving over the past couple of years. It actually preceded Governor Brown's administration when it was first started, and there were a handful of designated iHubs. Since then, we have grown to the current number of 16. The growth that of new iHubs that were added over the past year happened through an application process. So we had a full open statewide application process where we encouraged folks from all over the state in their respective regions to assemble their local stakeholders and that localized innovation ecosystem, put together a proposal that would indicate how the iHub would be structured, how it would operate, how it would function, and we went through that application and designated a new batch of iHubs to get us up to the total 16 number that we have now. And we, again, now that we've sort of moved to that level, we want to take some time to reflect and review and watch the progress of these individual iHubs, find ways, frankly, that our office can be even more effective in supporting what they're doing, start to measure the outcome, right? How many new businesses and jobs and other positive economic gains are flowing from the existing iHubs. I think we're going to need some time now for a while to do the evaluation and assessment of how the program is working and where there's opportunities perhaps to do more. So I think that's where we are with the program for the near term. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us. We've gotten to listen to a lot of good information and good music, I will say.
And I got to disagree. I think we do need education, right? And we need
That's right. That's right.
Folks, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Paul Granillo if he'll please come forward, as well as Dorothy Roth. Mr. Granillo is the President and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, which is the economic development corporation serving Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Among other coalitions which he serves, Mr. Granillo chairs the California Stewardship Network, which is one of the two lead partners for the California Economic Summit. He also chairs Mobility 21, which is a coalition of public and private stakeholders pursuing regional solutions to the transportation challenges facing Imperial, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino, along with San Diego and Ventura counties. Mr. Granillo, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I think my role today is to give a regional perspective of some of the work that you've heard discussed today. But in order to understand that, I think you need to appreciate the Inland Empire. So the Inland Empire, if it were a state, and we categorize the Inland Empire as the entirety of the 2 counties of Riverside and San Bernardino County, as the United States Census does. If we were a state, we'd be the 26th largest state in the country. We have to outgrow Kentucky by 70,000 people, and we would be the 25th largest state. So the Inland Empire is, in fact, a very large region of our nation and certainly of the state of California. But also, we have certain challenges. The history of the Inland Empire has been one of great growth over a relatively short period of time. And our largest quality of life issue is our educational attainment level. 19% of our 4.3 million residents have a bachelor's degree. 42% of our residents graduated high school or they didn't graduate high school. And so as we talk about these issues, it is important to keep in the context of the discussion that regions of California, some are doing very well and others are not. The majority of those regions that are struggling are in the spine of the state, working its way through the Central Valley, the Inland Empire, and certainly into Imperial County. When you have an educational attainment rate of 19%, it is very hard to attract the innovation economy to your region because you do not have the educated workforce that they are looking for. So 19% of our region, bachelor's degree. If you look at San Francisco, bachelor's degree attainment and graduate degree equals 54% of the population. All right, that is a polar opposite reality. And yet we see policy that seems to reflect sometimes the part of California that's doing well, and that what is, in my opinion, often lost is what that policy, the effect of that policy has on the part of California that is still struggling post the recession. That is why we in the Inland Empire Economic Partnership have been pleased to participate in the California Economic Summit, because the Economic Summit is built around the regions of California. And as you heard earlier in the presentation, that's powerful, because California's economy is an economy of regions. And when we can reflect economic policy that supports the different regions and their strengths and helps to mitigate their weaknesses, that is going to make for the best possible California economy moving forward. And so the action teams involved in the California Economic Summit, workforce, advanced manufacturing, regulations, capital, infrastructure, housing, and working landscapes, they are all issues that affect the state and regions of the state. And what you see in the summit is people coming together to have discussions about how do we do this together. And like you, as members of the legislature, we don't always agree because of our regional needs. But when we discuss issues of competitiveness in California, and you've heard this mentioned today, there are issues of regulation. Our 3 largest growing sectors in the Inland Empire are manufacturing, goods movement and logistics, and healthcare. In goods movement and logistics, 42% of all the goods that are imported into the United States come through the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles and are transported through the Inland Empire. So we got a lot of trucks. And we have to understand that it is our #1 growing sector for a region whose educational level is low. And so we are heavily dependent on blue-collar industries like manufacturing and goods movement and logistics. My chair, California Steel, on average, they pay about $95,000 per person who works at California Steel. The majority of them did not graduate from college. and yet they have certainly a middle-class job, and they're able to be successful. And so when we look at competitiveness and some of the issues you've heard on regulation, we have to make sure that that regulation takes into consideration the impact it will have on a region like us, heavily dependent, again, as I said, on blue-collar jobs. When we talk about energy costs, highest in the country, that is a competitive issue that our businesses need to grapple with. Taxes, pick one. In California, it's the highest. And so, and as Kish said, and I'm very laudatory of GoBiz and Kish Rajan and the work that they do and his appreciation for regions. But when you add all of that weight on top, and you are dependent on sectors that feel that pressure, if we're not careful, we could do great damage to regions of California's economy. And so we participate in the California Economic Summit so that we can have that discussion, we can have that debate, and hopefully then bring our solutions to you, because you're going to have to fight those out as well. So I want to say that the California Economic Summit is just something that I believe is of great benefit to the state of California. Working with GoBiz, the Inland Empire Economic Partnership has been pleased to work with GoBiz. We work very closely on, after the passage of AB 93 and SB 90, on the California Competes tax credit. You heard what Kish said, that $60 million was created, projected has created 10,000 jobs. In the Inland Empire, more than 6 million, we've received more than 6 million in tax breaks, and those breaks will eventually result in 1,300 new jobs in our area. So that's been a very strong program, and we've been happy to work with GoBiz in bringing together businesses across Riverside and San Bernardino in order that they hear the presentation and they're able to take advantage of California Competes. Mr. Chairman, our sister organization, the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership, has been very successful with the iHub, built around clean technology, and the accelerator in Palm Springs, and I know that you're aware of that. So those are some of the programs that we're working with GoBiz, and they are being very, very successful. I would just conclude with an invitation, as Mr. Mayor presented to you, because this year, this will be the third of the California Economic Summits. The first was held in Silicon Valley, the last in Los Angeles, and this year we've been able to have the summit come to the inland part of the state, where we want to focus on a lot of the successes of the Inland Empire. It is a great place, but also some of the challenges for the inland regions of California as they continue to struggle post the recession. Thank you.